splendor of the King, clothed in majesty. Let all the earth rejoice, all the earth rejoice. He wraps himself in light, and darkness tries to hide, and trembles at his voice, and trembles at his voice. How great is our God! Sing with me, how great is our God! Oh, we'll see how great is our God. And age to age he stands, and time is in his hands, beginning and the end, beginning and the end. The Godhead three in one, Father, Spirit, Son, the Lion and the Lamb, the Lion and the Lamb. How great is our God! Sing with me, how great is our God! Oh, we'll see how great is our God. How great is our compassions, they fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever wilt be. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Summer and winter and springtime and harvest, sun, moon, and stars in their courses above, join with all nature in manifold witness to thy great faithfulness, mercy, and love. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Pardon for sin and a peace that endureth, thy own dear presence to cheer and to guide, strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow, blessings all mine with 10,000 beside. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me.
I need something about 7 miles from here. Sorry? Bunker Hill? Does sound about 7 miles away? Okay. Yeah? So you don't think Bunker Hill's 7 miles away? Okay. Okay. If you can get that vision in your mind, I don't have that one, but get that vision in your mind. That's how far Jerusalem is from Emmaus. Most people don't know that Emmaus is kind of like French Lick, Indiana. There are hot springs there. In fact, the word itself means warm springs. And people would go from Jerusalem to Emmaus, like once a year to get a bath, whether they needed it or not. They would go there to sit in the warm waters, maybe for health reasons. Sometimes they would go to Emmaus on vacation. So it was a very common trip for people to take. And 7 miles back then, that was a walkable distance for them. Today, here we got to walk 7 miles and consult cardiologists and foot doctors and all kinds of stuff like that. See if we're capable of making that walk. 7 mile piece of cake for those guys. And we come to this story after the resurrection of Jesus. And I want to spend a few minutes with it. In fact, this may be my favorite moment of Jesus after his resurrection. And you'll have to just indulge me as I walk you through chapter 24. And we're going to start down at verse, I can't even read my own writing, verse 13. So we've got these two men walking to Emmaus from Jerusalem, and they're having a chat with each other. Now, if you fail to do this next part, you're going to miss part of the story. At the crucifixion of Jesus, do you recall the sun being blotted out for 3 hours? That happened just a few days ago. That's fresh in your mind, wouldn't it be? Like, I've never seen an eclipse of the sun, but I hear it's kind of spectacular to see it going on, and people remember it. The Bible also says that there were dead people who were raised to life again at the crucifixion of Jesus. Wow. How about this one? Everybody, I can remember hearing this one so many times, it kind of drove me crazy. The veil of the temple was torn in two, yes? And everybody makes a big deal out of this one. It was torn from top to bottom, not bottom to top, showing that God was the one who tore the curtain. I got something that you ought to be paying attention to besides who tore the curtain. When the curtain opened, well, the purpose of the curtain was to separate man from God, yes? And now the curtain is torn, so now we have direct access to God. Who's heard that blessing? Yeah. Hey, let me ask you a real question. Once the curtain was torn, where was Jehovah? Why wasn't he there? I mean, if that's what the purpose of the curtain was, shouldn't he have been there? It's okay to say, yeah. He should have been there. Where was he? Well, my answer to that was this, that the chief priests and the rabbis of the temple had become so corrupt that Jehovah had vacated that building 500 years ago. He wasn't there anymore. He said, my people have turned so far away from me, and their leaders have turned so far away from me, I'm done with them. And all this business of the rabbi going in with a rope tied onto his leg, so if he died while he was in the Holy of Holies, hey, I want to know what that guy was doing when he was in the room if Jehovah wasn't there. Now, I like that chat. He wasn't. All those things, though, are going on. Right? Would you think, hey, the temple failed to work? Jehovah wasn't there. Do you think that would have sent ripples through the city of Jerusalem? I'm going, yeah, big time. So these two guys are walking along. What do you think they're talking about? I don't think they're talking about the Cubs and the Cardinals baseball game. That's just me. I think they're talking about all the events of this past week. So now on the same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, walking toward Bunker Hill. They were talking with each other about everything that had just happened. And as they talked and as they discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them. But they were kept from recognizing him. And he asked them, hey, what's up? Right? A very gentle question from Jesus. Hey guys, what's going on? What are you talking about? He begins a conversation, knowing the answer, but he gives them the opportunity to begin the conversation. What are you discussing as you walk along? And they stood still, their faces downcast. The one named Cleopas, the male Cleopatra, the lady, Cleopas is the same name, but for a man. Ask him, are you the only one living in Jerusalem who does of these things that are happening in America today? Would say, have you been living under a rock? Do you not know what? You're kidding, right? You don't know what's been going on? Jesus says, no, what things? Now that we begin, I'm going to say this, to get a glimpse into their understanding of who Jesus was, and I'm going to tell you, they were right on money. What things? They say, well, Jesus of Nazareth. He was, we'll start with, he was a prophet. Is that true? Did Jesus ever prophesy? Jesus said that he will be killed, that he will be in the tomb for 3 days and he will be resurrected. How'd that prophecy turn out? You want to say on the money? Me too. Did Jesus prophesy about other things? He did. They happened, yes. The other definition of prophet, one who speaks for God. Did Jesus ever speak in the place of God, telling you what was on God's mind, on God's heart? Yes, he did. Did that in the temple. He was a prophet. I'm going to say they got that one. So they're one for one. He was powerful in word. Is that true? Let me take you to the Sea of Galilee, and he speaks to a violent storm that is so violent that grown men who have been fishermen all of their lives have been on that sea, have been in that boat, and the storm is so violent that they wake him up because he is exhausted, sleeping in the bow of the boat, and they wake him up and say, don't you care that we're about to die? He gets up and says to the winds and waves, calm down, we got enough of you. Quit, stop it. And the waves stop, and the wind stopped blowing. And the disciples are now even more terrified by the man in the boat than they are the storm. They're kind of like, hey, should we have the storm back, please? One of the disciples says it very interesting. He says, what manner of man is this that even the winds and waves obey him? Like, who is this guy? Powerful in word. You know, when Jesus finishes the Sermon on the Mount, one of the people listening to him said, man, I have never heard anybody talk about that cat before. He speaks with one with real authority. He's not relying on stuff that somebody else has said. He's bringing it on his own. Was he powerful in word? My answer is yes. Was he powerful indeed? Did Jesus ever do anything that demonstrated his power? Well, me, I would say, well, let's go look at the book of Mark, and you can open up to about any page you want to, and there will be a demonstration of his power there. A friend of mine said this once to me. He said, if you want to evangelize Africa, or voodoo has got a death grip on that nation, that continent, don't take the Gospel of John with you, because the idea of love is not a very strong motivator in Africa. You take the Gospel of Mark with you, because in the Gospel of Mark you see Jesus pitted against the powers of hell over and over and over, and the demons beg for mercy, showing his dominion over them. They got nothing. They can't fight back. You know, one demon says, "What do you want with me, Son of the Most High?" He was powerful indeed, and he did this before God and all of the people. He didn't do it when we weren't standing around. You know, I do a couple of card tricks that are pretty lame, but I'm easily caught. And what I have to do is I got to make sure that I've got my act together before I do the trick for it. If they ever ask me to do it a second time, I can't. Because that's not my thing. He did his miracles out in front of everybody. Take it back to the very first miracle that we looked at together of the wedding feast. Remember that? What water did he use? Well, he didn't use spring water. He said, bring me the foulest, dirtiest water that we've got in a place that everybody's been washing their hands in, and he turns that into the best wine that they had at the wedding feast. And we all saw it. Because we're looking at that thing going, I'm really sure I washed my hands in that. Didn't you? Where'd you wash it? Yeah, that clay pot over there. And now they're getting wine out of it, and it's good stuff. How did that happen? Well, it wasn't done because it carried away. It's been right there all the time. He did these deeds before God and before all the people. And then the chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped he was going to be the one who redeemed Israel. Hey, knucklehead. He did. You just kind of missed it. You weren't paying attention. Like in that movie I saw one time, it said, did you not study law when you went to law school? You absent that day? See, they had this vision of what redeeming Israel was going to look like. Their system between Jerusalem and Rome, that the Romans were in charge, and I would point to many ways the Romans were in charge. Here, I'll give you a couple of easy ones. At this time, the high priest had a piece called an ephod. Do you ever remember hearing about an ephod? It's like a vest that you put on over your head, and there were 12 stones on it. One stone for each of the 12 tribes of Israel. And he wouldn't wear that all the time. It was for a kind of special occasion of like a day like Yom Kippur or Passover, that he would go and wear that as part of his special garb for that holiday. And then after the holiday was over, he had to give it back to the Romans because they possessed it. It was one of their ways of showing Israel that they were under their dominion, that they couldn't even worship their God unless the Romans said it was okay for you to do that this week. And so I've always thought this, that the Jews weren't upset with that system. They just didn't like the role they played in the system. It didn't bother them that there was somebody in charge and somebody not in charge. It bothered them that they weren't the ones who were in charge, and their vision of Israel being redeemed was that they would be in charge and that Rome would be doing their bidding. And so maybe their vision of what Messiah was going to be and what Messiah should do was the problem here. So we had hoped that he was going to be the one to redeem Israel. And what is more, it is the third day since all this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning. They didn't find his body. Isn't it amazing how fast word got out? You know, they didn't have the internet, but still this is all over the place. It was this morning, but they went there this morning and they didn't find the body. They came and told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb, found it just as the woman had said. And they did not see him. Interesting that some of the men went to verify what the women said. In this culture at this time, Women were not allowed to give testimony in court, that their words could not be believed for whatever reason. So when women said this, we had to go send a guy to verify it. My sister has a sign in her office, and it says something like, do you want to talk to the man in charge or the woman who knows what's going on? You know? I like that a lot. Anyway, some of our companions went, it was just as they had seen. And then Jesus said to them, how foolish you are. This had to come as kind of a shock to them. They kind of get through it. How foolish you are. How slow of heart. That you did not believe all of the prophets have spoken, all that the prophets had spoken. Did not the Christ have to suffer these things to enter his glory? And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what had been said in all the scripture for them concerning himself. I've had in my lifetime some teachers that I revere, and if I've given you the impression that I don't, boy, that was a misconception on your part or poor communication on my part. Some of my teachers, I think the world of. Any of you ever watch a show, NCIS LA? Yeah, there's an actor on that show. Her name is Betty, and one of my great teachers would remind you of Betty. A real tiny lady. Her name is Dr. Lynch's. I met Dr. Lynch's when she was about 75 years old, still teaching, still incredibly brilliant. When I first met Dr. Lynch's, I was my first year in grad school, and I was pretty sure I didn't belong there. I was sure that everybody else was smarter than me. I was pretty sure I had a second-rate education, and I was just terrified of being called on in class and, word getting out how stupid it was. Back then, we didn't have notebook computers. We didn't have a notebook computer opens up the screen in front of you. But I did have a briefcase that opened up like that. The old style briefcases that had the hinges and you opened them up. I had one of those. And I hid behind it. It was on my desk, and I just terrified that it was going to be my turn to get called on. And one day she took me aside and she said, why are you like this? And I told her what was going on with me. She said, I've seen your stories. You belong here. No. Must have had a good day. And from that, she asked if I would mind if she would become my advisor, my faculty advisor. And I said, I would like that a lot. And Dr. Lynch's saw that I was good in math. So she helped me. She taught me how to think, how to reason my way through stuff. She took my math skills and did some great stuff with it. And when I graduated, my parents didn't come to graduation. I asked Dr. Lynch if she would be my family at graduation. She meant that much to me. When I speak of her, Wendy would say, did you have a crush on her? I said, Wendy, she had me about 55 years. But maybe a little. Somebody will teach me something. Holiness. A great place in my life. One other teacher, Dr. Tyler, was a teacher of mine in graduate school of religion. And I didn't realize how much Dr. Tyler meant to me. I don't know, I'll tell you a funny story about that. I called Dr. Tyler, 20 years after graduation. And we were talking about a particular topic. I won't bore you with it. And we knew each other well enough, and we knew each other's libraries well enough. So when we were talking, you know, we said, blah, 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 well, what do you think about what Kendrick says here? I know that he's read Kendrick, he knows I've read Kendrick. And he said, you know, and then he replied to that, he said, well, what do you think about, you know, what McClellan said? And, you know, and then almost there's a pause. And both of us said the same author at the same time in life. Both of us saw where that conversation was going. And got the same giggle, even though no joke had been told. And when Dr. Tyler passed away, I felt like an orphan. I felt like, who do I turn to now when I have a question? And so there were a bunch of us who were his students. And I said, so who, you know, those guys, who do we go to now? He said, well, one of my friends, Mark, said, I guess we go to each other. I said, well, I've heard you guys stink. You know, but when something comes up, I find myself on the phone with one of those guys. And one of the great questions always is, well, what would Dr. Tyler say about this? Those of us who spoke at his funeral were deeply moved by what that man had done for us, and the tools and the gifts that he had given for us. But we were slow of heart. But somebody had to take us from the beginning. Like Jesus did these people. And he started with Moses, and he ended with the Christ. It says they approached the village, and you know the story from there. They approached the village, and they figured out they were at the feet of somebody who knew what he was talking about. And that is a rarity in that day. And as he gave thanks for the bread, they said, how do we miss this? The comment that I would take from this lesson for you is very simple. And that is that there are moments when Jesus the Christ is standing right in front of us and we miss it. Jesus is trying to speak to us, and we're not making our way through what he has done. We are so consumed with self. We are so consumed with our agenda, so worried about what we got going on, that we miss what Jesus is talking about. Maybe we need to spend more time in his presence, more time being aware of his presence, so that we don't miss him when he's standing in front of us.